Discord. The chat platform for everyone has a disturbing dark side to it, and Fantastico, a Brazilian Sunday night news broadcast watched by 30% of Brazilians, exposed the dark side of Discord for everyone to see. Their investigation led to the arrest of 6 terrible people, and here's how it happened. Before the 6 arrests, Fantastico took their first swing at Discord with this article, how the Discord app became a tool to engage teenagers in an underworld of extreme violence. They were sent hours and hours of extreme violence and shocking material shared within the hidden Discord community. This community, with over 16,000 members, shared a variety of videos and photos. And the sad truth is that this material is still common on the normal side of Discord, but we're on the dark side of Discord, and the content that was sent in the server was even worse. And the report by Fantastico does not hold any punches. Fantastico broadcasted a pixelated video of someone stomping a dog. And let's just keep in mind that this was shown to 30% of Brazilians that watch TV. People finally got a sample of the dark side of Discord. Now, in this Discord server, the main objective was not to just share gore and awful videos. In fact, they wanted to challenge someone to practice violence against themselves or animals in a form of cruel fun. In one video, there was a young woman who writes the name of the Discord server into her leg, but that video was nothing compared to what's next. In September 2022, a 13-year-old girl wearing a skull mask tried to harm a neighborhood cat. And during that challenge of cruel fun, the girl was advised to set a piece of paper on fire and to use that fire to continue the challenge. But what ended up happening is that the whole house caught on fire. Now, these cruel challenges were not something that people do for fame. It's not like a TikTok challenge where you can inevitably hurt yourself. These challenges were more about psychological torture. How they managed to do that in the first place was still a mystery to Fantastico, but not for long. After almost 2 months of investigating the dark side of Discord, Fantastico dropped the second part of their investigation. And this was big. Virtual blackmail, humiliation. See who they are and how the criminals who teenagers on Discord acted. In this report, there were 5 guys who were put on full display for all of Brazil to hate. Every person in this group had the same goal: to express their disgust for women. These 5 people were part of an operation that would seduce, extort, and abuse minors, and each person had a role. Each member would hunt down potential victims, young girls between the ages of 13 to 16, and try to befriend them. These criminals would take advantage of the widespread loneliness, potential mental health problems of people, or just the raw innocence of their victim. If the criminals were successful, they'd ask their victims for intimate photos. And that's where our first member, Vitor, known as True Vitor, 21 years old, who described himself as the most dangerous guy on Discord, comes into play. His job was to document and store all the illicit photos that every criminal gathered. From the footage you see here, he's shown shirtless and pantless, unfortunately, going through a folder called Backup of Ropeable Sluts. There were countless folders of victims, and each folder contained a dozen photos. These photos that were saved were used as blackmail. If these young victims didn't do what these criminals said, these photos would be leaked on social media for the victims' friends and family to see. Now, Vitor here, he's a chubby loser with 0 social skills, and that's where we introduce the next member of the criminal network. Ezekiel, known as Dexter, was the most successful blackmailer of the group, victimizing over 15 people. Kneel down, bow to me. I'm a fucking god to you now. You are a who really deserves to suffer. Now, Dexter's job was to blackmail his victims into sending even more explicit photos. The cycle would continue over and over again, driving victims into a deep, depressed state. Dexter would convince his victims to prove their dedication. By carving his nickname Dexter into their skin, these victims would be both physically and psychologically harmed, even if they didn't even meet in person. But that's where Carlos, known as DPE, a 19-year-old, would come into play. DPE had his own place to stay, and what he would do is he would convince the victims that their family doesn't love them, and that these victims would truly be free from their pain if they lived with DPE. And among DPE's victims was a 13-year-old girl who traveled 500 kilometers just to meet with him, and DPE would do unthinkable things while also live streaming it on the Discord server for everyone to see, and those members watched and enjoyed every second of it. Abuse was seen as an accomplishment for the criminal group. It was a trophy for their hard work. But DPE wasn't the only one that participated in these unthinkable acts on this unfortunate victim. In fact, there were 2 other men, and these other men were Gabriel, known as Law, 22 years old, and William, known as JOUST, 20 years old. These 2 criminals aided in the blackmailing operation, and they manipulated minors into traveling to DPE's house. And these criminal abusers went through multiple victims to satisfy their twisted fantasy for power. But this power came crashing down. All 5 of these awful men were eventually caught after a thorough investigation of this Discord server. The victims feel helpless, powerless. They've been told that they're nobodies, they're worthless, and that their family doesn't love them anymore. But that's not true at all. These victims are beyond powerful. These 5 disgusting creatures had no concern in their mind that they would ever get caught, which allows the victims to collect evidence freely and eventually take them down. All it takes is one courageous victim of this criminal group to record these abusive and illegal voice calls as evidence. And they went to the police, and it led to the arrest of these 5 frontal lobe lacking sick pieces of garbage. Now, for anyone that is going through something like this, you aren't alone and you have the power to put these people behind bars. You should never be afraid to reach out. And all these arrests came from a simple recording of Vitor showing his SSD filled with illicit photos. All it takes is one tip, and the whole operation could come crashing down. But there's one member of this criminal organization that I haven't talked about yet. On July 4th, Pedro, also known as King Doe Discord, was on their computer playing League of Legends teamfight tactics when they got a knock on the door. The man at the door said, "You're under arrest." This guy was the kingpin of them all. I guess it makes sense with their username. But King, who's a 19-year-old, was the creator and administrator of the main Discord server. This was the guy that allowed all these awful acts to happen on his Discord server. But he's even worse than you think. If we rewind back a little bit, most of the other criminal members, when they got arrested, they were dead silent. They got caught and they knew they were in trouble. But King Doe here is a whole different type of character. He's talking left, right, and center. He would respond to questions ironically to the reporters, and at some point he even said, "Be more professional," to a reporter, after the reporter asked if he was considered a disgrace by his family. But the man behind the Discord server that let all of this happen was finally behind bars. Case closed. But this is one case of many. Discord is always filled with vile people, and Discord will always say some fancy PR talk just to save their very poor public image. And I quote from Clint Smith, a Discord spokesperson, "We are a free product for over 150 million users around the world, and from time to time, bad content and bad behavior will happen. We are actively working to remove this content. But as someone where my full-time job is being on Discord, it's kind of sad to say, but whatever, I can promise you that I have seen countless reports go unactioned. And if by some miracle the person that is abusing people gets banned, well, the abuser can just make another Discord account and continue as if nothing happened." Now, there's one final thing about this whole entire case that absolutely blew my mind. While I was editing this video and getting footage of the arrest, I came across this Twitter post, and it's just talking about the arrest of King Doe Discord. And we know he is a character and quite the mentally deranged person. But one thing I really want to point out is that there's this video here. Images of the place where the young man operated the Discord server, computer and other devices were seized, data will be analyzed by the police. Now, this guy has quite the setup. Things to note is that he has a microphone with a red glow. He has a desk with a complete bite mark taken out of it. This dude is completely feral, and once we get a little bit further, we notice this crappy monitor. Now, while I was getting the footage from the news broadcast and picking out specific clips, I came across this interview that kind of caught my eye. We have a red microphone, a desk with a bite taken out of it, and a crappy monitor. And when I connected those dots, I honestly could not believe what happened. This dude, King Doe Discord, this most cocky, arrogant piece of garbage, actually went on the news to be interviewed about a server that he ran. Wow. I literally do not know what to say. Anyways, that is the end of the video. I just found this really interesting and I had to tack it on. I'm sorry. Anyways, have a fantastic day, sweetheart. Mwah!